everybody. Welcome to our full Fire Authority meeting on Friday the 26th of July here at the Joint Police and Fire Headquarters. Welcome to all elected members and officers, and welcome to our colleagues from EY, KPMG, and also our colleagues from the County Council in terms of the internal audit report as well. You're very welcome, Andrew, Richard and Hassan, and thank you for all members and officers who are present here today as well. I'm going to move straight into the agenda. So our first item is apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Tom Smith, Police and Crime Commissioner Gary Godden, and also from Councillor Jason Zadrozny, and I don't think there are any other apologies today, so we'll take a note of those. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members or officers in relation to any of the items on the agenda today? I'm not seeing any indications. Item 3 then is the minutes, which is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of May. They're on page 3 through to page 8 of, page 7 of our agenda pack on the yellow pages. Are there any comments or questions people want to raise in relation to the minutes? People happy to approve those as a correct record? They're agreed. Thank you, colleagues. Chair's announcements. So just given the changes to our local members of parliament in the general election, a letter will be sent from myself and the Chief Fire Officer offering all of our new MPs a meeting with the Fire Authority Chair and Chief Fire Officer. Obviously this is a great opportunity to promote the service and lay out the future challenges and how our MPs can support the organisation and continue to lobby the government. This is something that myself and the Chief have done in previous years and has been very welcome. And obviously I would say at this juncture the role of elected members here in the Fire Authority and your relationship with your local MPs is incredibly valuable as well, and has always been very useful when there have been particular issues that we've needed to be pressed at a national level. So please do continue to engage in that through your respective group leaders, or indeed direct conversations with myself or the Chief or other relevant officers. Just in relation to His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary report, following the service's recent HMI inspection, the final report for us is due for publication in week commencing the 12th of August. I would again like to thank everybody across the service who has engaged with the inspection team, and I'm sure we all look forward to receiving the report and how that underpins the ambition to be an outstanding fire and rescue service, which is obviously what we've set out as an authority and a service. As soon as the report is published, the Chief intends to circulate a link to the report for members to have a read through, and obviously if there are any questions arising from that, there'll be an opportunity to discuss that here, I think, in subsequent meetings. If people want to pick up a conversation with the Chief or any of the other principal officers, please do that. Just in relation to the new government, Dame Diana Johnson has been appointed as the new Fire Minister. The Chief Fire Officer has written to invite the Minister to Nottinghamshire at the earliest available opportunity, and members will no doubt be aware that she previously chaired the Home Affairs Select Committee into the fire service culture, and we look forward to a positive reply from Dame Diana Johnson, and I'll certainly be happy to pick up any conversations with Diana directly on behalf of the service if we need to do that. In terms of the Asian Fire Services Association, some really positive news that the Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service hosted the summer conference with the Asian Fire Service Association. There were over 30, I think, fire and rescue services represented and approximately 200 delegates, and it was a great opportunity to showcase our own service on a national stage and to hear from others and learn how the sector can improve together, and congratulations to everybody involved in both securing the opportunity to host that conference but also showcasing our service in the way that they did. Thank you to everybody involved in that. An outstanding job, very well done. Given the length of today's agenda, there won't be any strategic inclusion board taking place today. However, following September's authority meeting, staff networks will be again attending to engage with members, and I would please encourage all members to engage in that in September. Last time the staff networks came and met with members, it was a really positive and fruitful conversation and discussion, so please do join us in September for that meeting. And finally, colleagues will be aware, because it's been very well advertised, that it's Nottingham Pride tomorrow. The service is always very well attended, and I think he's going to be leading the parade once again. Members of the fire service, obviously staff will be there, but members of the authority are very welcome tomorrow. It starts at 11 o'clock tomorrow from Listergate, just down by the church there at the Marks and Spencer's Marks and Spencer's on Listergate. So please do join us if people want to take part in the parade and the activities that will be running throughout the day. Are there any comments or questions in relation to Chair's announcements? No? Okay. Item 5 on the agenda then is our 2023-24 revenue and capital outturn. It's on page 9 in our agenda, and Tracy's going to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is for the members, and it's for the provisional financial performance of the service for 23-24. The outturn position gives members an overview of the financial position following the completion of the unaudited statement of accounts for 23-24. So we're going to move on to the main body of the report, onto section 2.1. So in 23-24, the revenue budget was set at 49.9 million, and that was approved by Fire Authority in February 23. The budget at that time included a 404,000 use of budget pressure support reserves, and that was added to the budget to fund the deficit. The total expenditure for 23-24 was 48.9 million, and that represented an underspend of 1.3 million. From the underspend, there's 327,000 carry-forward requests that have been received in the service. These are for the projects that have not been completed yet, and works that were related to 23-24 that now will be moved into 24-25. This reduces the underspend to £1 million, which represents 1.99% underspend. In addition, within the report, there's a request for the carry-forwards of 475 to be moved into earmarked reserves. These earmarked reserves will be £300,000 for anticipated costs regarding the mobilising system, and we want to build in a new reserve for 175,000 to support revenue costs of capital schemes going forward. The 404,000, which was used for the budget pressure reserve, is no longer required for 23-24, and that now leaves an underspend of 121,000, which will be moved into the general reserves. So Table 1 shows a summary of the expenditure and the funding, assuming that the approval is given to the transfers of the earmarked reserves outlined in Table 2. Table 2 is on the page 15, and this shows the earmarked reserves that are in more detail. We'll now move on to the main variances first that have actually happened within 23-24. Section 2.4, the hold time pay, is underspent by 379,000, and this is due to vacancies in the establishment within the hold time pay. Moving on to the on-call budget is underspent by 219,000, mainly relating to the retaining fees of 62,000 and 55,000 for the training. On-call pay changes significantly month from month and depends on the level of activities within the year. The non-uniformed pay is actually underspent by 206,000, and again that's due to the vacancies within the establishment. One of the main areas as well is the premises underspend, which is underspent by 240,000. 151 underspend relates to electricity, and the gas is overspent by 51,000. And again, this is from fluctuations since the invasion of Ukraine, and it's made significant fluctuations within the budget. The business rates are underspent by 89,000, and that was due to the re-evaluation of West Bridgford Fire Station. There's an additional underspend of 148,000, which relates to the building maintenance, and this is mainly due to slippage in the works, and we're asking that to be slipped into 24-25. So moving on to the transport-related costs, there's an overspend of 195,000, and these are mainly due to two areas. There's 359,000 relating to fuel, and fuel prices have been reducing in the year. And the other one is the 371,000 overspend, and that's due to the unplanned maintenance fees. and that's due to the extending life of the vehicles and due to unscheduled repairs and the water foam tanks. Moving on to other income on section 2.12, page 14, we have a surplus of 484,000. This mainly relates to 87,000, which is additional income not provided for in the budget, and also 262,000. That's due to the surplus of interest receivables, and it's due to an increase in the interest rates. And we had an higher expectation of level of funds being available for investment due to the slippage in the capital programme. So in table 2.14, you can see that we've got the earmarked reserves that are being requested to be brought forward. So there's 3 items that are on that page carry forwards: external audit fees, training tower remedial work and fire cover review. They total the 327, and they're works that have not been completed in 23-24 that need moving into 24-25. In addition, we're requesting for 475,000 to be delegated to the new existing mobilising project and the capital funding equalisation fund. If these are approved, the earmarked reserve at the end of the financial year prior to the audit will bring the total for the earmarked reserves to the 31st of March at 5.8 million. And after the proposed contribution of 121 to the general fund, it will bring us to just over 5 million at the end of 31st of March. So more detail of the earmarked reserves can be found on page 23 in Appendix A. Now moving on to the capital programme, there is an underspend within the year of 1.9 million against the revised budget of 9.2 million. More detail of this can be found on table 4, page 16. So some areas of that I need to bring to your attention. The Service Development Centre and the appliance project exceeded the budget in 23-24 by 479,000 and 433,000 respectively, and this was due to the timing of projects and the completion of works going across the 2 financial years. And approval is requested to bring forward 912,000 from the respective 24-25 budget and allocated into 23-24. After adjusting for the additional 912,000 in year, that will bring the total underspend to 2.8 million. And the slippage on the programme requires the budget to be transferred into 24-25 going forward. If this is approved, this will result in a total underspend of 186,000. In section 2.21, a summary of the variances are shown in the table, and more detailed breakdowns of the schemes are in Appendix B, page 24. So I'd like to bring your attention to some of the main areas of the variances. Some members will be aware that the appliances had a budget of 2.9 million for 23-24 and 2.4 million in 24-25. Angloco issued a rebuild of the 17 appliances, which has resulted in a quicker delivery for the chassis from Scania, and permission is requested to bring forward the capital expenditures from 24-25 of 433, and the final and hopefully we'll get more details when the final outturn is confirmed. Moving on to the estates, access and inclusion. That we're referring to section 2.29 now. The construction programme was delayed until January 24, and now the project is progressing, and it is requested that 322,000 be slipped into 24-25. Moving on to SDC, the budget in 23-24 is 660,000, which included the allocation of the BA facilities and SDC and Mansfield Station for firefighters' safety. The work has been completed, requiring the budget again for 24-25 to be split forward into 23-24. Moving on to section 2.45, this is regarding the replacement mobilising system. 567,000 that has been paid in 23-24, And this project, again, spans over multiple years in the capital programme. And the 403 remaining budget is requested to be slipped into 24-25. Members will be updated on the scheme as it progresses, and then it will be reported in the 24-25 capital programme budget monitoring. In addition, there's some capital programme changes for 24-25 going forward, and approval is requested for these, and more detail can be seen in Appendix B on page 25. So there's 145,000 that we can use to do these projects. So 60,000 will be for the electrical charging points, 68 for the remedial works, and 17 to increase the light vehicles budget. Going on to section 2.47, additional approval is requested to increase some of the budgets in the capital programme. So there's 100,000 to increase the access and inclusion scheme, and that will be funded from the efficiency programme reserve going forward. In addition, there's 367,000 for the energy reduction decarbonisation scheme, and that will be funded from the grant from the public sector works. 894,000 is due to an increase in the appliances, and 367,000 relates to the realigning of the original budget, and 527,000 is due to the increase in the contracting price linked to CPI. These budgets will be managed in the year, and the slippage of the other projects, and the funding will be finalised at year end. So that's the main body of the report. Any questions?
Thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate your presentation of the report, and for a comprehensive report. I think there are two things for me just before opening it to members. Obviously pleased to see a strengthening of the position in terms of the general fund reserve and the earmarked reserve, and given some of the unpredictability and volatility in terms of the financial situation, not least with inflation, to have ended up where we've ended up. With, relatively speaking, a slight underspend and being able to contribute into those earmarked reserves and a small amount into the general fund, I think is very positive. And I also think that the report is very clear in explaining why there is a need for the slippage in terms of the capital programme for each of the individual items, and for some of the increase in the budget in relation to the capital programme. So thank you for all your hard work, Tracy, and thank you for your presentation of the report. It's very much appreciated. Anybody would like to ask any questions? Niall?
Thank you, Tracy, for the presentation, and apologies if I missed something in your presentation. So with regards to 2.4 and 2.6, what happens to the underspend? I also want to know what is being done to fill the vacancies, and because there are vacancies, what impact does it have on the services?
Right. The first bit of the question was regarding section 2.4
and 6, which is the non-uniform underspend, which is page 13. 12 and 13.
Sorry, I can't say. 2.4 is about airwaves, sorry.
Understand.
Page 12.
Whole top page, please. Underspend.
Just below the table 1.
Whole time page.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
sorry.
Page 12.
That table 1, 2.4, whole time pay.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Specifically,
I've got my phone on.
2.6, the non-uniform pay.
I really can't hear you, sorry.
Should I be a bit loud? So I'm just asking page 12 and page 13, section 2.6 and 2.4.
Yep.
You've spoken about the underspend money. I just want to know what happens to the underspend money, what is being done to fill the vacancies, and what impact, because we have vacancies, what impact does it have on the services?
Right, thank you. Sorry about that, I just couldn't hear. Right, the whole time pay, all of the underspend, when we've gone through the report, all of the underspend has been allocated either into earmarked reserves or into general fund reserves. So what we're doing is we're saying that the underspend is there, but we want to reallocate them into the earmarked reserves going forward, and then the balance of the overall underspend is 151,000, which will go into general reserves. Now, as regards to the vacancies, Craig's going to pick that up.
Yeah, I suppose if I go back sort of almost 3 years now about the position the authority are in around projected deficit. So 2 years when I first became kind of chief, we were 2.2 million and then 3 point something million. Okay, it didn't result in that. But obviously the planning of the service and the authority was we weren't going to recruit massively because we were projected a huge deficit. The knock-on of that is we were in a better position, but we'd actually got vacancies, and the time taken to actually recruit to whole time, so something like 9 months from advert to appointment is about 9 months where we're carrying vacancies. The on-call side of it is we always carry vacancies. It is persistently difficult in terms of on-call to cover that, and I think Tracy's covered the training and the on-call allowance, the retaining fee, so we see some of that. The non-operational vacancies, again, we saw something like a 30% turnover in staff, and I think we saw that in terms of like the general public sector. Thankfully, that is pretty much dealt with from a sort of a non-uniform operational sense. That is pretty much dealt with. We always carry some vacancies, and we factor a vacancy factor into the budget planning, and that's been readjusted very recently since Bev, your new treasurer, has arrived. So Bev's had a new look at that as well. From a what does it affect in terms of communities? If it's around appliance availability, you have something like an average across your whole time, and you're on call of about a 99.7% availability of appliances. So from what the public see, very, very little. What impact does it have on staff? Sometimes there's fewer crews or fewer crew numbers on appliances. But in terms of managing that, I don't really see that we've seen a massive impact in terms of public side of it, Councillor.
Thank you, Niall. Does that answer your question, Niall?
Yes.
Thank you. Nigel?
Yeah, thanks for the report, Tracy. Loads of number crunching. What I would like to see, there's a lot of talk about underspend, slippages, etc., and a lot of figures in there. I'd just like to see another figure. I'd like to see more percentages in there. So it's all right saying, you know, there's 200,000 underspend, but what percentage of that is it on the budget? So can we include percentages within there? Craig's just spoke and mentioned 30% of staff, so it just gives a different perspective on it.
Thank you.
Take that.
Thank you, Nigel. We can pick that up. It's a good suggestion. We can pick that up. Audra, and then I've got Jono, Roger, and Richard.
Yeah, thanks Tracy for the report. Very, very detailed and comprehensive. I probably welcome an opportunity outside the meeting just to go through it in a bit more detail. Just some observations. Just picking up on Nigel's point about slippages and percentages. I guess my question more is where we've got slippage and we're in 24-25 as we speak. How confident are we in delivering on the capital programme for 24-25, considering we've got slippage in 23-24?
In terms of completely delivering the capital programme, I think it's a bit mixed. There's a bit of balance between our capacity to deliver it and our ambitions that we want to deliver it, and then the external factors. So where we, on the appliances, F&R committee will know as well, members that have been on that, we had a huge delay on chassis originally, and there was a delay, and we had to slip it. And now what they're saying is they're delivering chassis really quickly, so we're governed by that sort of global side of the suppliers. So a lot of that is driven by that as well, Council, and that's where your biggest spends are, things like fleet. So yes, we can, in terms of like trying, we are looking at whether we can bring additional capacity in to deal with the capital programme, because it's having that skill and capacity to actually deal with it. Because these aren't, you know, with all due respect, there may be fire officers who are leading the departments, but the skills and expertise to actually get the work done are coming from outside the organisation. So we had a meeting last week with Bev about whether we can bring more support, professional support, to deliver the capital programme. So things that NEMS will see, you've got something like 10 or 11 of your sites having access and inclusion work done. That takes somebody to deal with the contractors and suppliers to deal with that work. And they aren't somebody like me who's been trained in a career of firefighting. So it's a real challenge. I suspect there's going to be some more slippage. We do have a history of some slippage, and I think that's probably a part that you'll want to see about how confident are we, or how big is the slippage, or is it being reduced even if there may be a slippage. So I can't say I can guarantee it. I certainly can't take a look at history, but trying to bring that additional capacity in, because there's a match between the ambition we have as an organisation and our capacity to actually deliver on that ambition. Whether that's a roundabout and it's answered, but I can send a pick up with your outside even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Audra. Thank you, Craig. Jono?
Just a quick one. This is a 265-page report with an added 32 pages. Most of our site didn't receive this until 3 days ago. This is a massive report trying to read in 3 days. If possible, can we try and get these with bare minimum 5 days? Because I don't know when the other side received their report, but 3 days to read a report of this magnitude, and with the amount of finance into it, and allow us to come back to office and ask them questions before we come in, it's just not the time.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think your frustration about the post is shared. Some people only received their report yesterday. I would just also stress to members that the report is published immediately online, that it is published. And I know it's not always easy to read on screens, but it was published last Friday, which gave people a full week to read the report. But I take your point that sometimes if there's a lengthy report, reading that on a screen is not easy. We're obviously at the whim of the post, and everybody knows some of the challenges we've got around that. But the point is made and the point is taken. Mine didn't land in through the letterbox until yesterday, but I had a chance to peruse it online. So please do look out for the links online. And if members aren't clear on how to access the reports online, please do come forward, and Malcolm will be, I'm sure, happy to assist in terms of that information. But the point is well made, John.
I'll just come back, because are these printed in the system?
Yeah.
Because I'm more than happy if you want to get a report. We're around the corner. I'm more than happy to run over and grab one copy. At least we'll haul out one copy to be able to look at it in the office. Because it's a 10-minute drive from county council. At least we can have one report for us all to peruse over in our own time. If that helps.
Yeah, okay. You've made the point, John. Let's let Malcolm pick up the conversation outside of here about whether there's a way we can improve things. But members just also need to be aware of the opportunity to access the papers online as soon as they're published. But we'll pick up the point you've made. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd personally like to thank Tracy for a very detailed and comprehensive report. You know, the subject area is quite complex, shall we say, for those of us without an accountancy background. I think I speak for the Conservative group. We understand the various under overspends and support the comments and the proposals that are summarised in items 2.1 and 2.2 of the report, and the proposed changes to the reserves. And I think the final comment I would make is I think we're aware of the major project, the Tri-Service Control project. You know, that's a big project, and we get it, if you like, that to allocate the cash year on year for such a large project, it is challenging, shall we say, and so we understand and support the report.
Thank you, Roger. Your support is very much appreciated, and your kind words about Tracy's hard work are very much appreciated as well. Thank you for your understanding and support in terms of some of the capital slippage, particularly around the issues about the mobilisation project. It's very much appreciated, Roger. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I think part of my question has just been answered, but just checking really. On the capital programme report, paragraph 2.19, the Service Development Centre and the Appliances project has seen the budget for 2023-24. Is this just basically meaning then that we're just reducing the 24-25 budget by that amount, just a via over?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm quite simple. Well, I'm not simple. I just wanted to check.
Yes.
And then also in paragraph 2.31, where you're referring to the electric charging points that have been installed. Just a query, really, not directly related to the report, but do these bring in any sort of revenue, these, or because who plugs into them, or because people plug in to charge the cars up, I assume, and they pay someone, do they? Just curious, really.
We have got a small element of income for people that are using the charging points for non-operational, and they've got a card, and we just get a bit of they reimburse us with what they're using, and that's all recorded through Tramman within transport.
Oh, I see. Okay, so but we pay the energy supplier, I assume,
Yeah.
the electricity, and then we.
Yeah,
It's all monitored, yeah.
I think at the moment, because we're moving our fleet, light fleet in particular, more towards EV charging, it's more the primary thing is having the infrastructure to be able to do that as an organisation.
Oh, I see.
And then over time, how do we actually charge back or make that access? Because a lot of these charge points are behind secure gates in compounds of fire stations.
Yeah.
But if you look at Edwinstone, they're on the front of the station, so maybe in the future. But of course, that depends on, are we going to see lots of vehicles and cars in front of an appliance room, which may be coming. So we've got a future of change coming, but
lot of interest.
yeah, me too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Craig. Any other comments or questions? The recommendations are set out at the front of the report then, so it's that members approve the transfer of the £802,000 of underspends to earmarked reserves as set out in section 2.14 in the table, that we approve the slippage of 2.678 million on the capital programme as set out in section 2.20 table 4 and appendix B of the report, that we approve the 2024-25 budget for the appliances, 433,000, service development centre 479,000 to be accelerated into 2324, which is section 2.19. Approve the slippage of 28,000 on light vehicles to be repurposed for rural firefighting and equipment, which is in section 2.24 of the report. We approve the repurposing of the capital budget and underspend that is funded by borrowing of 145,000, section 2.46 of the report, and the respective items that are listed underneath in terms of a breakdown, and that we approve the following increases to the 2024-25 capital programme as set out in section 2.47 of the report, which are £100,000 increase to the Access and Inclusion Scheme, £367,000 increase to the Energy Reduction and Decarbonisation Scheme, and an £894,000 increase to the Fire Appliances Scheme. 367 of this relates to aligning the budget to original approved scheme budget, and 527,000 of this is due to the increase in contract pricing linked to the Consumer Price Index. So I'll move the recommendations. Somebody happy to second the recommendations? They're seconded by Councillor Clark as the Chairman of Finance and Resources Committee. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? They're carried unanimously. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Tracy, for walking us through the report and the hard work and the comprehensive nature of the report as well. It's very much appreciated. Item 6, colleagues, is the Internal Audit Annual Report 2023-24. Andrew, you're very, very welcome, and I'm going to hand straight over to you to introduce the report.
Yeah, okay, thanks. This starts on page 27 of your pack with a covering report that was done by Bev Bull, the Head of Finance. That introduces the Head of Internal Audit's annual report, which starts on page 34. I'm just going to highlight to you the main points from this. On your page 35, paragraph 10 says, our overall opinion on the services arrangements for governance, risk management and control, we're giving substantial assurance, which is our highest rating. Our opinions throughout this report are mostly positive, as you'll see. In paragraph 10, there's 3 bullet points which summarise the reasons for our substantial assurance. The first bullet point is that our audit opinions on individual jobs are mostly get a substantial assurance rating, especially on the core systems. This past year, we've given 4 substantial assurances on the core systems of health and safety and business continuity planning, also on workforce planning and information security. In previous recent years, we've given substantial assurance on core systems such as payroll, budgetary control and risk management. The second bullet point on paragraph 10 explains that follow-ups of previous year's actions, which we call action tracking, provides generally positive results, and I'll have a bit more to say on that later. The third bullet point over the page, our assessment of the services governance, risk management and control arrangements obtained through an assurance mapping process is all positive, and again a bit more on that later. Paragraph 14 summarises our individual audits that we've done this year, the audit reports issued. 4 had substantial assurance, again our highest level of assurance. 1 had limited assurance, and 1 has been carried forward to the next year because not enough had been done on it at that point, so there's no opinion on that one. Paragraph 15 summarises the recommendations from each of those audits very briefly. Bev Beale, as head of finance, has also put into this report that those individual audit reports, so I'll actually be coming on to that in a few moments. Paragraph 16 over the page, sorry, no, is it over the page? No, it's at the bottom of that page. Describes our action tracking, which is the follow-up of audit recommendations from previous reports. Paragraph 18 states that the implementation rate of actions is 88% on all actions since 2018-19 and 63% of the previous year's actions that we action tracked this year. If you just want to go forward a couple of pages to it's page 41 in your pack, this on action tracking, there's 4 pie charts which give an illustration of the implementation rates. Green means implemented, red means work in progress. And you'll see on the previous years, the first pie chart there has over 50% of a red section on it. So that shows the priority 1 actions from the previous year that we followed up in 2023-24. The text below explains why not all those have been implemented. There were 3 actions from the audit of performance management. The 3 bullet points there give mitigating explanations. One of those was almost complete, one of them actions was well underway, and one has only one of the 4 parts still to do. So there's some assurance that even though not everything had been implemented, those actions are receiving attention. Just want to go back to paragraph 19, which is on page 38 of your report. This summarises our substantial assurances on governance, risk management and control. We gave a substantial assurance to all 3 of those areas, governance, risk management and control. And under those, in paragraphs 22, 23 and 24, there's the 3 bullet points of explanation just to summarise our substantial assurance. And there's much greater detail on this if you go to Appendix B, which starts on page 42. This summarises our assurance maps on governance, risk management and control, and you'll see, looking through that, there's a wide range of assurances supporting our substantial assurance opinion on those areas. Keep flicking backwards and forwards here, but now if you go back to paragraph 25, which is on page 38 of your pack. This is about internal audit performance. It's our performance as a section, as a team. Again, that's positive, including at paragraph 29 explains that we had a satisfactory external quality assessment last year. And that's something we have to do every 5 years. Appendix C, which starts on page 49 of your pack. It explains our audit plan for this coming year, the year that's already started now, 2024-25. So I discussed this with Bev Bull, Head of Finance, in April, and then it was informed by a discussion at SLT in April. And the 6 audit areas that we're going to be looking at this financial year are the firefighters' remuneration system, looking at rostering, whole time, overtime. Second one is procurement, which we've just started. Third one, corporate governance, looking at reporting structure and some issues on standing orders and financial procedures, which we picked up in action tracking that still need finalising. The 4th area is GDPR. That's a core system which is due for audit again. 5th area, replacement mobilisation system. We're looking at the project management and governance of that. And the 6th area is leading the service, the National Fire Standard, which is the audit which was carried forward from the previous year. From page 51 onwards, the 5 audit reports issued in the past financial year are put into the pack. And on those, Bev Ball, Head of Finance, has added some additional updates on progress against the recommendations in them. So the 5 reports are workforce planning, which had no recommendations in it, so that was a satisfactory substantial assurance audit. The second one, information security, that had 2 recommendations, and the comments have been added to that report showing that those recommendations are now in progress. The actions in respect to them is in progress. The next report is health and safety. The actions on that are ongoing. The 4th report, business continuity planning. There was 1 recommendation and that has now been actioned, that has been done. And finally, there's a report on contract management, which had 6 recommendations. Comments added to that. 4 of them are, those recommendations are now in progress and 2 have been completed. Okay, so that brings me to the end of that.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for walking us through the report and for the work of the internal audit team as well. It's very much appreciated. And thank you to Bev as well for her input to this report as well. Are there any comments or questions for Andrew? Alan?
Thank you very much, Andrew, for the report. Very useful actually to take us all through it as well. I suppose you've answered one of my questions already in terms of the pie charts. On our papers, they're not coloured in. So the first question was always going to be which bit's the red and which bit's the green.
Yes, good point.
So I think when you're going for your report,
The lightly shaded bits green.
For those watching in black and white.
They are coloured in on my version, but that's if you print
yeah, yeah. So that was the question. But you've already answered that. I suppose the follow-up one is obviously on all the reports. Actually, there's quite a lot of assurance. The one that was almost flagged up is the contract management, and that's Appendix 6, page 71. I suppose there's quite a few priority 1 areas actually in there, and I believe I think Bev's provided the updates on recommendations on page 74 of the report. I suppose the big concern actually is that when you're looking through it, that's quite a big gaping hole that some people aren't aware of which contracts are responsible for. IT manager nor the OHU manager had seen the contract documentation at the time of the audit. I suppose in terms of the officer responsible for the implementation, that would be the procurement manager, and I think the procurement manager's got quite a bit of work to do. So I suppose in terms of the future for the internal audit, I suppose the question is, are we confident about getting that assurance up for the next audit? If I'm looking more towards the buyer side of things.
Yeah. What I'd sort of say from our perspective, it's disappointing to have that when you've got all the others that are excellent, and when we see some of the work we're doing, it's kind of that outlier. So why did we get there? There is something around reading it. For me, there's lots of reasons why we're there. Not looking at it probably at a strategic level long enough. I think the huge turnover of staff and managers we've had, what is in their induction, so do they understand they've got contracts when they come into a new role? Yeah. I think there is quite a lot of evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, in the service to say that is. I met with Mick last week and Bev just for an update because it came back to SLT about, well, where are we then? Yeah. Is it actually changing and is it improving, or are we getting the grip that you would want for the assurance? We are looking at bringing more capacity into help procurement because we need to free the individual up, but carry on doing the business as usual. And we need to get to that place where there's a contract register that we're absolutely confident about, and everybody knows what contracts they've got, because people procure things under the financial but don't actually realise it's a contract that needs managing. Yeah. So there's some kind of education that's needed in quite a number of our managers, and I suspect a reaffirming of the culture in terms of contract management we want here. So those are some of the things. There's lots of reasons why we are where we are. I would have been amazed if one of your members didn't pick up the limited assurance. We are focusing on it. I hope by the end of the calendar year, we'll be in a lot better place, I hope, given what conversations I had last week.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
It does, yeah. I suppose that's always the, when you're looking back, think, well, it's all well and good to look at, oh, this was wrong, this was this wrong. Actually, for the purposes of the fire authority, we need to look at, what can we do to change things, what's improving. So I'm pleased that the SLT are, looking into, are we keeping on track? Because that's how you keep on top of these things.
Yeah.
I think it was page 75 actually, when the procurement team was not always consulted concerning the goods and services being procured. So it does seem almost, it needs to be a two-way street as well for the procurement team. But yeah, thank you very much for the.
There's a cultural thing there. Managers wanting to empower them and get on, so we don't be too over bureaucratic, but realising there's a contract process that you need professionals to help you with, and the organisation needs to be aware of what's the list of contracts we've got. And I think in particular over this next year, as you face some of the financial challenges, Bev and the team are already looking at non-pay areas, which includes contract, where we can make some savings. And I guess with unlimited assurance, we may be seeing, not aware of things where we can make some efficiencies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Just to add to what the Chief says, disappointing, but I was quite assured by Bev's robust response, both in terms of agreeing with the recommendations of the team, but also the clear plan set out. I think, given the question that's been asked, it would be sensible, Chief, for Councillor Clark's Committee, Finance and Resources to receive an update at an appropriate point about the progress being made on contract management, to give members the opportunity to ask further questions at that point. And I'll leave that with yourself and Councillor Clark to pick up with Bev at a point that is appropriate, not wanting to create further undue work, but to give an opportunity for members to ask further questions once some progress has been made. Thank you, Callum. Roger?
Thank you. Yes, a good report overall, but I would focus on the contract management, wouldn't I? And I know that's a very difficult area really for some staff to get their heads around, but I think it demonstrates the value of the internal audit, so good there. I'm never shy of asking a question about acronyms, because every organisation is loaded with them. I have to confess, I don't know what an OHU manager or OHU software in the intend is all about. Anybody informed on that?
Occupational health unit. We'll deal with the acronyms in future. And intend is our tendering process, basically our online tendering procurement process.
Thank you. Then my final comment on the page 75, appendix 6, where it says we could not be assured that every contract is included. I mean, that's a heck of a challenge. Would there not be some delegation or de minimis value that would say, well, you've got to give people a chance to order these things and do various bits and bobs of what's legally a contract, but to catch every contract is what the word is. And I would have thought it's incredibly onerous, really. Just a thought.
I do believe that the contracts manager now has put processes in place to, when they come through on project codes and things, to actually capture them. So moving forward, they will be captured.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Andrew. Any other comments or questions on this report? Okay, we're asked to note the outcome of the internal audit annual report 2023-24, including the audit opinion of substantial assurance for the arrangements for governance, risk management and internal control. Note the outcome of the 5 internal audits completed during 2023-24, and note the 2024-25 internal audit plan. I'll move the recommendations. Somebody happy to second them? They're seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? They're agreed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Andrew, for giving your time to the work of the team, the internal audit team as well. Item 7 then is the interim value for money reporting 2021 and 2022 and 2022-23. And Richard, you're very welcome. I think you're going to speak to this report.
Hassan's.
Oh, it's Hassan.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Hassan.
Hi there, Chair. Thank you. I'll take you through this report just by way of background. Members may be aware of the issues impacting the local government audit market. As at December 2023, there were 771 audit opinions which were outstanding at that particular point in time. As a result of the issues facing the sector, there has been proposals which were put in place by DLUC in terms of a reset of the local government audit market, and there were consultations which were undertaken by DLUC, the FRC and the NAO in terms of actions to enact that reset, with backstop dates being proposed for the completion of outstanding audits, including potentially disclaiming the audit opinions for audits which were still outstanding at points in time. The proposals have been impacted by the calling of a general election, so it would have required legislation to be put in place in order to have the legislation in place for action to be taken by the sector in order to take forward the proposals. Where as a sector we're still now waiting for guidance to come out, so that as a sector that means yourselves as local government bodies and ourselves as auditors. We're anticipating that guidance will be coming out soon, and then there will be the legislation will then start to take effect. But as I said, we're still waiting for guidance in terms of the how and the when that will be taken forward. In terms of our response as a firm to consultations, so Stephen Reed, the head of our local government and public sector audit, communicated in a letter to auditor chairs and Section 151 officers in December that we were focusing our efforts on undertaking the audits of pension fund audits, also completing our value for money work for outstanding years, and also looking to take actions on audits of 23-24 financial year in order to be in a position to have the reset taking effect, and being in a position where some of the issues that have impacted on the reset are not continually going forward. So what you have on the agenda today is a report summarising our findings for the 21, 22 and 22, 23 RVF, our value for money responsibilities. So within the report we highlight within section 1 we provide an outline of the procedures that we undertake in terms of the work that we do in relation to value for money. We outline that the work that we undertake is against the criteria which is specified by the National Audit Office. So the 3 criteria being financial sustainability, governance and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. What we have as auditors is a responsibility to report by exception if we identify any significant weaknesses in your arrangements. Within section 2 of the report, we provide a summary of, against each of the 3 criteria, provide a summary of our considerations for the 21, 22, 22, 23 financial years, and based on the work that's been undertaken, we have not identified any significant weaknesses in arrangements in respect of the responsibilities that we have, which is a good position to be in. And within section 3 of the within section 3 of the report, the appendices, you'll find each of the reporting criteria that we have a responsibility to consider as defined as set out by the National Audit Office, and a summary of the arrangements in place. So rather than taking you through a page-by-page turn, I'm happy to take any questions that you have. So the summary is that no significant weaknesses in the arrangements identified.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your time. Thank you for talking us through the report, which colleagues have got before them. Are there any questions that colleagues want to ask? No. We're asked to note the contents of the report. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That's agreed. Thank you, Sandra, for coming along as well. Very much appreciated. Next on our agenda then is the external audit plan for 2023-24. Richard, you're going to introduce the report.
Yeah, thank you. So it's my first meeting, so I'll just introduce myself first before diving into the paper. So I'm Richard Walton, a director for KPMG, and I have the role as your external auditor from now onwards, basically. So the financial year has just ended, plus a few after that, I am the person responsible for the audit. We've been out of the local government market for a few years due to the contractual tenders that have happened, so KPMG haven't delivered any external audit in local government for a couple of years. But before that contract started, I worked in local government for my whole career, so I've got about 12-15 years worth of experience of local government audit. I live in Nottingham. I'm based in our Nottingham office. I live in Cockrave, in Nottingham, and so I have been doing local audit of a lot of places locally. So I've worked on the audit of the City Council, the County Council, the Police Authority, Rushcliffe, Gedling, virtually every other body. You're the only one I haven't worked with, so I'm happy to tick the box to get the full list. But back to the paper. So page 91 is the first kind of page of any detail within our paper. I've actually got an amendment that I want to point out to you here. So this paper says that our materiality is about 1.5 million. We've actually held a meeting the other day where we compared notes with the other auditors of fire authorities across the country from KPMG, and it was pointed out to us that we calculated that number in a slightly different manner. So the headline message is that our materiality is going to drop to 1.2 million. So the impact of that means that we'll test slightly few more transactions than we would have been planning. So Trace will get a few more questions, but the general gist of how that is, you are comparable with everyone else. It's still 2% of total spend, but that's a slight change, and we'll update that in the final version of the report when we report back to you later in the year. I just wanted to point that out. So it's not 1.5 million, it's slightly lower at 1.2. And so go through over the page. This gives us a kind of overall summary of our paper. The timing is something that is really interesting for audits at the moment. As Hassan mentioned, local government audits are very behind as a sector. And for those audits where I come in as an auditor, it's a really unusual position that you haven't got the previous accounts signed off. Normally, you just say, okay, I'm not going anywhere near that. If you're not signed off, there's something wrong, so we're not going to get on with that. But we understand that it's a sector-wide issue. So we are getting engaged and starting our audit in the normal timetable. So we have an auditors on site this week, finalising our planning and risk assessment work. And we've got time but later in the summer to do the bulk of our audit. So we hope to have had the bulk of our audit to be done in the normal timetable. So we're there or thereabouts by September, October time. However, due to the fact that the previous report won't be signed, that brings in loads of audit standards that we normally wouldn't have to consider as part of your audit. So I had to consider whether is there a risk in the previous period that impacts on your current period that I then have to look into. So for example, since the last time you got a set of accounts, I think this building's been built. So the accounting of this building is a judgment that we'll have to go through. And normally the previous auditor would review that the year it becomes operational, it's signed off. I then come in and consent check, and the risk of there being something that I disagree with is much reduced because you've already had an auditor look at it. I don't think this has actually been through an auditor's set of accounts yet. I might be wrong, but I don't think it has. So that's the kind of example of the type of thing that we've got to go through a load of extra things that we would normally not have to do. And so that just pushes back the timeline. I'm hoping to sign your accounts by Christmas, but I don't really know yet, particularly as the guidance hasn't been published. But that's the broad timeline that I'm working to. And the rest of that page there, in terms of page 4 of my paper, so 92, I think it is, of yours, sets out that I use IT specialists to help look at the IT systems. I use pensions experts and actuaries to look at the biggest risky number in your accounts, which is the accounting for the pension fund. Page 5 of our report details the kind of headline messages in terms of risk. There's 3 main areas of risk that I want to flag to you as part of our report. The first one is management override of controls. That is a standard risk in every external audit report, so it's not. I don't think that your management are particularly risky. In every single external audit report, you always have a presumed significant risk of management override. That's because the impact of if management were doing something inappropriate, it would have a really big impact on what's in the financial statements. So I always look at that, and every auditor would always look at that as a significant matter, and there's an audit programme behind that we always do. The next one is, as I referred, the valuation of retirement benefits for the pension fund. That's because the way in which pensions numbers go in, they're very big. There's lots of estimates within there and how they're calculated. So there's a much higher chance of there being something wrong in terms of an error. So that's why we flag that as a significant risk. And we've got an audit programme where our actuaries look at the assumptions your actuaries make, just to kind of sense check whether there's anything in there that we think is unusual. And the last item, which we're tagging as an other risk, so we're not saying it's a significant risk, but we still think it's a big important thing for us to go through, is the valuation of land and buildings. So the way in which you calculated what your buildings are worth, it is, again, key area of judgment, so it's something that we'd look into and sense check that you're doing things in a way that we would agree with. There's then a page on each of those risks, which I'll try and take you through, but basically each of those, the detail of the risks on the left-hand side of that page, and on the right-hand side is our plan response in terms of what we would look at to do and the way in which we would approach it. I'll kind of flick over those and ask you questions in a minute. Page 9 and 10 of our report is telling you about the things that we're not flagging as significant risks. So we're following the guidance in the sector that we don't think there is a fraud risk in regards to expenditure recognition. So quite often in public bodies, the pressure to hit a certain target for a financial year means that the finance director would be under pressure to basically hit that target, so they would hide spend, so that they'd basically stick some invoices in a drawer for a bit and not pay them until after the audit's finished. That is a risk that we have in lots of different bits of the public sector, but we don't for yourselves just because of the way in which your budgets work, is that whether it's in one year or another isn't really an issue, it's whether you at some point run out of money. So I don't look at that as a risk for yourself, so we don't have that as a risk for yourselves, but we would do in other bodies. And then the next one is talking about all the different bits of income that you've got, the different sources of revenue that you have. We're explaining there why we're not triggering the presumed risk, which is in auditing standards, that revenue recognition is a risk. For a business, that's the biggest risk in a business, that someone will invent income. But for yourselves, it's quite difficult for you to invent income because of the actual structures of how it works to a material level. So that's what that page is talking about. We don't consider going concern to be a significant issue for yourselves, just because of the nature of how the fire authority is structured, and that follows the guidance that's similar in the sector. But we have to say that in the paper. And then there's various other bits there about my powers as an auditor and the different responsibilities I've got to issue things like reports of public interest and other matters. Most of those aren't relevant at the moment. There's a section there talking about our value for money work, which is this is a piece of work that Hassan's just gone through for the last couple of periods. That sets out the guidance that's in place, and the KPMG interpretation of it and how it fits together. There's a nice kind of diagram on page 15 of our paper which talks about the different processes we look at. So page 15, I've lost the count in my head what page that's on now. 106, I guess? 103. So that there sets out the work that we do in regards to value for money. So the bulk of it is to understand how you do things. So to understand the committee structure you've got in place, how the papers get there, what kind of papers go there, how are risks reported throughout the authority, that kind of thing. So we do a lot of work to understand all of that, and then we'll come to a conclusion as to whether you do things in a different way to everyone else, and you do things in a particularly unusual way that we think can be improved, and so we'll report back to that later in the period. And the outcome of that is that we'll bring a risk assessment to a future meeting, and also then we'll publish a public commentary that will be published alongside our work later in the year. So that requires us to say in public what we think about your things like financial controls, risk management, that kind of thing, and that should be published on your website. So all those reports you'll be able to see, you can look on other fire authorities' websites and see what other auditors are saying about them if you wish to compare. The appendices, I shan't go through page by page, but there's one there that details our team. So I'm the engagement director. Nicole, who will be the person who will come to this meeting if I can't make it. Nicole is a manager in our team, and she's working on lots of other fire authorities audits. And Bilal is the assistant manager. Bilal's based in Nottingham with me, and he's the day-to-day audit lead. So Bilal's been out on site over the last couple of weeks to do the nuts and bolts of our audit. So he's the person who'll be doing lots of the work. And then there's some information about our fees, confirmation that we are independent, so we don't have any of the non-audit work that will impair that. And then there's some information that KPMG put together and put in all of our reports like this that we think will be useful if you so want to go into the detail. But I'll stop my presentation there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for your time as well, and thank you for talking us through the report, the work that's been carried out as well. Very much appreciated. And it's nice to know we have somebody who's working on the audit who's vested in the area as well, in the community, and has a lot of experience across public authorities across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. Callum?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the report, much appreciated. Did I hear you correctly when you said you hope to get them signed off by December?
That's my current expectation.
I'm just looking at the report. I think in the audit cycle and timetable, it mentioned the 31st of October, 2024. So I'm just wondering if that a mismatch or is that?
So initially, this paper was planning to come to the last meeting.
Okay.
I think it didn't. I can't remember the reason why I didn't, but it didn't. We decided not to change it because there wasn't any real changes to our risks. But the election got called since then, so the guidance was delayed. So at the moment, I don't know what Hassan's going to report in his report. If the guidance had gone through and come now, I think I would have a much better idea. So at the time, I was expecting that I'd know what EY is saying, so I'll be able to report by then. So that's the only change, really.
Okay.
There's no kind of big delay from our point of view in terms of progress of the work that's happening, isn't it?
So don't expect anything in October?
I don't think I'll be able to bring everything. If I can, I'll bring it, but yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Colin.
So very quick question. You did say when you was talking, there's a chance that this could take longer. If that's the case, will it cost us more money?
It's a good question. I think at the moment, the only reason why we'd be charging more money is if there's a change in the scope of what I've got to do. So at the moment, this fee is the fee that we quoted when we bid for the work as part of the whole overall contract process, and as part of that we understand that there's this kind of delay of what things are happening. But there is a small chance that if something comes out in that legislation that means that we then have to do certain extra pieces of work, then that will cost more because we charge basically by the day in terms of how we do it. But if it's just a delay, that no would necessarily charge more, but if there's a change in what we have to do, then it will do.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Richard. Any other questions, Audrey?
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you for the report. You said you've just come back into the market. I kind of question more about, and clearly your local experience, but is about capacity. So, and I'm not sure. I'm sure you wouldn't come back into market if that was an issue. But it's just to provide us with assurance that that's not going to be an issue in terms of delivery, subject to other facts outside of your control. That wouldn't necessarily be an issue in terms of delivering the timetable.
Yeah. So, so KPMG, we came back in the market. I think we were successful when we were 9% of local authorities. Before, we used to do nearer 25. And so there's been some changes in our staffing, but we deliberately didn't want to come back in a big bang to do loads more because we didn't want to run before we could walk. So we've carefully thought about the allocation of jobs to individual managers and people doing my job so that we're not doing vast amounts that will cause an issue along those lines. So we've tried to be really kind of prudent in terms of what we're willing to take on and where. So at the minute I've got no concerns about capacity.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments or questions? No? The recommendations then are that members note the contents of this report and the external audit plan and strategy for the year ending 31st March 2024 as included as Appendix A, which Richard has spoken to. I'll move the recommendations. We have to second them. Seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Richard. Have a nice break.
Thank you.
Take care.
I missed the flight, my wife will have this. Thank you.
Thank you for the work you're going to be doing as well, Richard, and the team. It's very much appreciated. Item 9 then, colleagues, is the annual governance statement, which is on page 121 of our pack, and this is going to be introduced by Tracy.
So this is the annual governance statement, and normally it forms part of the statement of accounts, and we normally bring it along with the statement of accounts for approval. The draft statement of accounts were presented to F&R in June, and they are available on the website in draft at the moment. So the audit of accounts are expected to be completed by this financial year, and that's been spoken about previously on the agenda. The draft annual governance statement for 23-24 is attached within the report in Appendix A, and it concludes that the service has a well-developed and evolving governance arrangements in place and is fit for purpose. The service's policies and procedures continue to be updated and reviewed, and the Financial Management Code has been adopted by the authority in June 21. The authority's compliance against the Financial Management Code was reviewed by the internal audit in 21-22. Whilst the 21-22 and the 22-23 statements of accounts have not yet been audited, EY have issued unqualified accounts for 3 years for their contract, which is 2018-19 and 2021, and that indicates that the financial systems are in place and are robust. The internal audit report provided a substantial assurance, and this has been covered previously on the agenda. The service has gone through a HMI inspection, and that was reported back in July 22 with a rating of good and against 11 areas of assessment. And the service is currently waiting for the HMI final inspection report, which took place in March and April 24. So the government statement draft is split into 3 areas, and they are outlining the governance framework that the authority has. It reviews the effectiveness and the conclusion. More details can be found in this report on Appendix A, and the conclusion is on page 146, and it's section 6.1 to 6.9, which gives more detail of the conclusion. So I've gone through some of the factors, 6.1 to 6.3 on page 146, but there are other conclusions as well, 6.5 to 6.9 on 147. So any questions?
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions for Tracy on this report? No? Members are asked to approve the draft annual governance statement 2023-24, which is presented, as Tracy has said, Appendix A to this report, and also to delegate authority to myself as the Chair of the Authority and the Chief Fire Officer to update the final annual governance statement for 2023-24 for any retrospective factors that occur between the draft annual governance statement and the publication of the final annual governance statement itself. So I'll move the recommendations. They seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, colleagues. Item 10 then is the annual statement of assurance, which is on page 149 of our packet. This is going to be introduced by Mick.
Thank you, Chair. Central government set out its expectations of fire rescue services in the national framework. Within the national framework, there is a statutory duty to report and produce an annual statement of assurance. That annual statement of assurance provides that level of assurance on it forms part of the whole package with regards to the fire authority. Specifically, the annual statement of assurance really reports on the set of expectations reporting against within your CRMP. And it really contributes to that greater level of public transparency and accountability that is required. Presented within the report is the annual statement of assurance for 23-24. And within the statement of assurance, we provided assurance against the CRP 6 objectives for year 2 of the Community Risk Management Plan. And really, the statement of assurance, whilst it's a statutory duty that we do the report, it's really an opportunity for us to celebrate the achievements of the Fire Authority and the service. So there is lots of details in the report and lots of
bits that we've picked out that we would like to celebrate as part of the annual statement of assurance. But I would like to the opportunity just really to highlight a few of those reports, and then I'd like to be able to highlight some of those elements, and then the further details is contained within the report. During the year of 23-24, attendance at operational incidents decreased by 7%. And importantly, on-call fire appliance availability exceeded the annual target and is currently sitting around 86.47%. And that's worthy of note, and I'll cover that, and that'll be referenced again in a future report. We delivered just close to 16,000 safe and well interventions. That's against a target of 14,000. We've continued to deliver direct engagement with young people across both Nottingham City and the county. We've completed 1,185 safety audits and 1,039 business safety checks, which is an increase of 96% on previous years. We've continued to train our staff to the highest of standards. We've continued to recruit. We've recruited 39 full-time firefighters, 25 on-call firefighters, and 29 support staff roles. We've continued to fulfil our statutory duties, reporting and investigating on the most serious of fires. We've done all that frontline operational activity and the backdrop whilst still dealing with various different challenges within the service. We've returned the whole-time crewing model at Ashfield Fire Station. We've invested and improved our operational training centre. And we've started, as already been reported, on improvements in our on-call stations to improve both accessibility and to improve the inclusive environment. We've purchased, as already been reported, 17 new appliances, and we expect the first one to be delivered imminently. We've continued to increase the diversity of the workforce. We've invested in the technology in the frontline appliances. We've enhanced our offer in terms of our partnership working, supporting events such as the Safer Streets programme led by Nottinghamshire Police. And as we've continued to do all that, we've strengthened our staff networks. I'm really proud to be able to present the report to you. There is lots of detail contained within the annual statement of assurance. An accessible copy will be presented or will be available via our own website. Chair, unless there's any more detail.
No, thank you, Mick, for cantering us through the report, and more importantly, thank you to everybody involved in the team for another outstanding year's worth of work and delivery for the communities that we serve. I think the report very clearly shows just how committed and dedicated people in the team are, and the excellent work that continues to happen, and not just the day-to-day work that is important and it's our statutory function, but actually the wider work in terms of in the community that is being carried out. So on behalf of the entire authority, through you, Chief, thank you to everybody for an excellent year of delivery, which I hope is borne out when we get our HMIC inspection report later in the year. It's certainly deserved, because the team's worked very, very hard in a pressured environment. Any comments or questions people want to raise in terms of this report? Tom?
Thank you, Chair. And I think first I want to kick off by saying, particularly to Mick and Damien, I think all the members may have experienced this before, but the two of the most impressive officers I've ever come across in local government. They're very receptive, and I appreciate it. And I think this kind of report kind of highlights all the good work they do just in place. And I think while I appreciate the reports that have been discussed this morning, let's be honest, everything we're doing is to facilitate what's happening on that side of the table. And whether it be the back office staff, etc., that's ultimately what we're in to provide that service. And I kind of want to just pick up on two things, because obviously it's kind of a report looking at what we've been doing locally as a service, but also touching on some of the national challenges and national conversations. If you're looking at Ashfield Fire Station as an example, there's been a massive difference not only to community feeling, but also actually how fast we've been getting to road traffic accidents and how fast we've been getting to fires. And I think members would be disappointed me to say that they're 4 deaths in the time that the fire station wasn't full time. And I think it's been great to see actually the responses, because we've had some big fires in Ashfield since it's open full time. It's almost like it's been a sick test really, but it's been great to see the staff do that, and I think that's big credit to Mick and Damien. But my final point really to make was, and I hope you won't shout at me for this either, Chair, but obviously with your new role in Parliament, and I think there's no better person actually that understands the fire service than you, I think particularly locally. I hope actually that you can champion some of the stuff, the challenges that we're having, because if you've been a member on the County Council as long as I have, you've seen council tax been given to the police more than we've been able to get. And I think I just kind of look, if we're sat here in 4 or 5 years' time, where's the resources for the fire authority going to be? And I certainly from the conversations I've listened to today, it's all red flags in my mind about where resources are going to be. And the reason I raise it in this report is really because as much as, you know, retained firefighters are good, I think there's no dispute that a full-time firefighter is far better. And I think actually we want to make sure we keep as many of those as possible and not end up being a retained fire service with full-time fire officers. And I think there's more experienced people in the room than me to discuss that point, but I don't know where it's going to end. So I think the reason I've spoken was really just to highlight some of the great stuff in that report, and particularly being a local member from Ashfield, I've seen firsthand actually the changes this authority can make to people's lives and actually saving lives. You can't get over that point. And that is down to Nick and Damien, but Chair, if I can, if there is anything you can do to promote what this authority does and other authorities similar in Parliament, I think it needs to happen, and it's a must now. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. You've certainly got my assurance that I will continue to argue for the service at a national level and a local level, as I know everybody around this table will, and I know the Chief will continue to do through his good office as well in terms of the organisations he's involved in. There's two things I think where we need to concentrate our effort and attention. The Chancellor intends to make, there'll be a fiscal event in autumn. I think she's very clear that there'll be one fiscal event each year, not this kind of mixed match of fiscal events we've had over recent years, and that's likely therefore to be an autumn budget. She is going to be making a statement in the House on Monday about the situation in terms of public finances, and anybody reading the papers in the last few days will see that it's not a hidden secret that public finances are not in the position that I think we were being told they were in by the previous administration. And if you read the papers, it looks like there's potentially a hole of 19 or 20 billion. Let's see what the Chancellor says on Monday, and that is of concern obviously, because what's that going to mean in terms of the public sector? Secondly, and linked to that, so there's obviously an effort in terms of lobbying around the budget in autumn, following in quick succession with the local government finance settlement, and there's a job of work I think for me alongside of the Nottingham and Nottinghamshire MPs, but also alongside you as city and county councillors and local district and borough councillors to make sure that we are pressing the case with the Home Secretary Yvette and Dame Diana Johnson, who's the Fire Minister, the new Fire Minister. I think the positive from Yvette as the Home Secretary, which I think has not always been the case, is that some of her earliest meetings that she carried out were with representatives from the FBU, listening to the National Fire Chiefs Council and having conversations with them. And whilst I know that the police get obviously quite rightly significant and important attention from the Home Office and from the Department for Local Government, as it was now CLG, as it now is, I think Yvette's quite clear that the fire service is an important part of our public sector as well. So I intend to work cross-party with the rest of the Nottinghamshire MPs and the City of Nottingham MPs to make sure that we continue to press the case, and in whatever future roles there are for us, however long I am here with you on the Fire Authority, and thereafter I know Craig will continue to press the case with all of us as MPs, and we need you to be doing that as well as councillors, because you at the end of the day have got really important knowledge on the ground about what's happening in your own individual divisions and wards as well. So I'll certainly, Tom, continue to press the case where I can, because I know how important it is for the service, and I'm sure your comments are very much appreciated by Mick and Damien and the wider team and the Chief as well, so thank you for those, Tom. Richard and then Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's always assuring to read the statement of assurance, isn't it? Because that's what you do, and that's what we're here for. And I know we get tied up with figures and things, but as colleagues are saying, It's a service that the service provides that is really important. And of course, you never know what you're going to be hit with next. You never know what that next emergency is going to be, and that's part of the fascination, that's the world we're in. But there is a bit of a theme growing in the world we live in at the moment, which you refer to in paragraph 2.6, and that's the storm Babette and the flooding issues that we're getting all over the county. Also, since then, there was also the storm Henk, wasn't there, earlier this year, which I'm sure you were busy with. And I fear that this is a world we're going to have to get more used to, the incident of, whether it's climate change or whatever, there is more flooding. So what I'm really wondering is, mainly you do work hard on these, but are we sort of preparing ourselves for the likelihood of having to be called out more? How are relations with, for example, the flood authorities, lead flood authority? I mean, are you in regular contact with them? Because I'm sure you are, because I can see the nods, but I just need that reassurance, really. And also, just for clarification, you referred in the report to rescuing the 200 residents from their homes and attending 40 flood-related incidents. Do we get involved where perhaps there has been flooding on highways, for example, but properties may not necessarily have been affected, but roads are blocked? Because I think I've picked up vibes over the last few months. There's a bit of a query as to just how far you go with regards to clearing water away from roads and land. So really just a bit of clarification on flooding, because as I say, I fear that at some point we're all going to get hit with flood issues again. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. As you very quite rightly said, in terms of there is an increased prevalence of wide area flooding and events due to climate change. And I think the point that you mentioned about in terms of that partnership working is absolutely critical. The successful response to the community of Nottinghamshire will come through partnership working, and we very much recognise that. So that whether that's working with various agencies such as the Environment Agency, we do that quite regularly, and we do that in terms of our pre-planning as well as our exercising programme to test that response. And not only of that, we also work very closely with the National Resilience Capability. We support the National Resilience Capability. What that is a agreement across the fire and rescue services where in the event of a flooding event, where we can pull resources, bring resources in from around the country, wherever that's best placed. So we do know if we experience in Nottingham, there's usually other parts of the country that experience as well. But we do work together and provide very much a strategic overview of where those flooding events are, what are the resources required to be able to deal with that. And we do that quite regularly. We practice that quite regularly and the prepare. So we have one of those national responding teams within Nottinghamshire. So I think we are well versed, well practiced and well prepared. There is, and it will be mentioned in a future report, there is always the contention about the responsibility for flooding. And as I previously stated, the expectations of the central government is set out in the national framework. A report I'm going to present in a minute about the HMIC, the Majesty Inspectorate, they still seek that we need further clarification on the role and responsibilities. Saying that, we don't let the red tape get in its way. We prioritise and we are there ultimately to respond to our communities in their time of need. And in terms of our ability to respond to a broad range of problems as part of flooding, is we will always prioritise life risk. We will always prioritise that. But we also recognise the impacts of flooding, whether that be on the national infrastructure or whether that be on more localised infrastructure such as road floodings, and we'll make an assessment, and we're well versed in making that assessment and determine if resources are required or are they best pulled back for those priority calls where people are at risk.
Of course.
That's good, helpful. You've mentioned the Environment Agency and the National Resilience Forum.
Yes.
But how are things with the local lead flood authority, which is the county council?
Yes, we work very closely with the county council. We work very closely in terms of that level of support.
Yeah.
it's something we do in terms of both exercising and pre-planning.
And we're very plugged into the local resilience forum and
Yeah.
the emergency planning, etc. The county that you'll be very familiar with, Richard.
In the basement.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, just on that point the Chair makes about local resilience forum, it's kind of the approach or the structure of that nationally has been under review for a while. I'd be interested to see now the current national administration, is that going to continue or be different? I think in terms of flooding, I've seen 29 years of flooding here, and the last two, although they were significant, probably weren't as significant as we had in 2010 because of the wide area that it covered at that time. So although it's predictable, it's quite unpredictable about how it will land. So I think local resilience forum, your point about reassurance around our partners working together. In terms of the duty, in terms of flood response statutory duty, that came up in 2004 under a national report called the PIT Review. Nothing, in my view, has moved on since 2004 in that sense, because it was a recommendation then. It also talks about if it was a statutory duty, the funding would come with it. As a chief fire officer, I'm quite sceptical that just because I'm going to get the statutory duty, I'm going to get the funding with it. And of course, the chair, particularly with his role now about the gap in public funding, what I would sort of say, it says fire and rescue on the side of our vehicles, and it says fire and rescue in the name. It doesn't say fire, and we'll have a think about the other things. We've been doing flood response and water rescue here since I think 2001-2, regardless of whether it was statutory duty or not. So we've been doing it for nearly a quarter of a century. We've also got all our equipment on every appliance for flood response, so every firefighter can have basically dry suits and flotation devices to respond to flood. You'll see in one of the reports around the Outturn report as well, I think it said today, where it talks about we've done personal issue PPE in terms of dry suits for our technical rescue teams, and that'll be certainly something we'll think about in the future about what requirement of equipment. And of course you've got a new CRMP coming as members where we have a duty to risk assess all fire and rescue related risks. So flooding will clearly form part of that, and I say to members, if there are gaps when you see that in a draft of your concerns, then that will be a real good chance to challenge the CRMP, making sure that we do reflect what communities need. And the last thing I would make about flooding, this is coming, or it's more inevitable. So I think there's going to have to be an onus on communities and how homeowners about how they're building in mitigations and plans. So if I was thinking about places like Loudon, for example, what have they been doing over the years continuously? Because I think up to about 2013, the Association of British Insurers were being flexible about insurance. I'm not sure they're going to continue to see that flexibility where homeowners don't start to build in more mitigations if they're near an area of flood. And I guess the last thing I would just say, particularly where there is planning authorities, where developments are taking place within the city and county, are they actually taking into account the environmental impact of flooding on residents, or are we just trying to build houses quickly? Because I think that will be an issue that will, in hindsight, I wish we'd. So those are just some points, Chair, if I can make. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got Audra, Nayab, and then Sybil. Audra?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think it's just to probably pick on your point, Craig, that as politicians, as local councillors, we have a duty to lobby our MPs, and where we are planning authorities, we have a responsibility to actually look at legislation around planning, especially where flooding is concerned, and how we work with the Environment Agency too. But going back to the paper in particular, I actually was quite pleased to see this paper, considering we spent most of the morning looking at finance, governance and audit. So to my mind, it was a real pleasing paper to look at. And I just don't think people outside really appreciate and recognise the work of what the fire service actually do. And actually, I was really pleasantly surprised to see what has been achieved in the last year, especially around quality, diversity and inclusion, and how we actually work with our communities and our businesses. So I just wanted to recognise that, and I'm sure Michael and his role as MP, and actually just to formally congratulate you on that, will continue to be our biggest ambassador and supporter for the fire authority, to ensure that we are still considered at heart of what he's done. But I guess my specific question is that what do we do about our engagement with media and actually letting the media and the wider community know actually what we do as a fire authority?
Well, just on the kind of the comms side, we do have a comms team. We're on YouTube and everything, and it's trying to broadcast it, trying to extend that hits, and of course our comms team trying to engage with local media. I think what we'd like to see in the media is more good news stories, if I'm being brutally honest, and that is a direct, ask of our media colleagues to start being a bit more balanced, and there are some good things, because what I see from this is it's an opportunity to celebrate. The Fire and Rescue Service is pretty poor at celebrating internally all the great things it does. I celebrate every single day the fact that I've got over 800 people who are absolutely awesome about what they do. We've got some challenges and the service has got some challenge, but actually this is a report to celebrate in the climate of continuing years of challenge, and we've got some challenges ahead of us. I'm certainly not rose-tinted glasses about that, but this is an opportunity to absolutely celebrate. And we've had some engagement with our media colleagues in the past. They still call us fire brigades. We've not been a fire brigade since 2004. We still hear quotes of firemen. I've been in the Fire and Rescue Service for 30 years, and I never joined as a fireman. I joined as a firefighter. So we'd like to see the media engage with us around some of the more positive things. However, on the downside of that, of course, is there's some negative media and high-profile things about the Fire and Rescue Service in relation to culture. But we will continue with our comms team and councillor to make sure we push this out there. I guess as well is that fire's down on the list of kind of like things to report. It's either things in policing or in the county or in the city. So we just need to work a bit harder, and hopefully we'll get some more airtime.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Craig. Naya?
Thank you so much for the report. I really welcome, and I'm sure the group will echo as well, or all the colleagues across the floor, about increasing the diversity workforce. I'm really pleased to see the number of female firefighters, the LGBT community, the ethnic minority community, disability network, veterans, how they are increasing in our workforce to reflect the diversity of the fire authority. I also welcome the learning opportunities and the code of ethics, which are mentioned in page number 182 in the strategic goals part 4. How the fire authority, how the authority is trying to not just increase but to create awareness and to retain the diversity in the workforce as well. I also welcome the commissioning of into people to make sure that to have an in-depth analysis, and the NTU commissioning of NTU to provide specialist analysis. It just shows how we are actually trying our best to increase diversity in our workforce, and to make sure that it reflects across the authority. My only specific question is that in terms of learning opportunities and embedding the core code of ethics, what impact has this had in retaining or even improving the culture, especially in terms of our underrepresented communities?
Thank you, Naya.
The core code of ethics now has been very much at the forefront of the service for a number of years. Not only do we have the core code of ethics, but we also have our own sort of behaviour and our values. And these work together to make sure that we drive in the culture that we expect within the service. How does it relate to the retention of minority groups within the service? That is a really difficult question. A very good question, but a very difficult one to do. I think it really sets out, if I'm honest, the expectations. It sets out the broad expectations that we have, and we reflect your expectations as a fire authority, and very clearly that message that you make very clear on a very regular basis, and quite right to do so, how important it is that we represent and reflect our communities, and the way that we achieve that is by having a very diverse workforce. So in terms of that, its direct link to retention, it's very difficult for me to say here, but it does certainly clearly show in terms of our ethos, our ethics, and the way that we do conduct our business.
Thank you, mate. And I think I'd just add, Naya, thank you for your kind words about the diversity work. It's very much appreciated. I think this is possibly going to be borne out in the conversation in September. My experience over my time on the authority is the more we make this workplace a welcoming place where people can be who they want to be without fear or favour and without fear of discrimination, the more you are likely to retain people, and not only the more you are likely to retain people, the more you are likely to attract people from a diverse range of backgrounds, which I think has been demonstrated, and I think there's a positive journey here in the service, but there's always more work to do, and there's always more work to do nationally on this as well. So I think the core code of ethics is important, but I also think NIAB, having people like you and other colleagues here in the Fire Authority who are willing to be ambassadors and allies and to represent the authority in communities and speak up for the importance of people seeing this as a career opportunity, either as a firefighter or playing a really important role in all the other services and functions that the service carries out is really important. And you know, obviously you've heard me speak before in here about a number of different members of the authority who have led very strongly on that, but you know, not least Patience as our previous Vice Chair, and now Audra making the arguments that she's making in relation to equality, diversity and inclusion. And I know everybody around the room supports that agenda in a cross-party nature. So I think it's both the work of our officers, our principal officers, but everybody in the service, but also the work of us as well as ambassadors and allies as members of the authority, absolutely critical in this area. So thank you for raising the issue, Naya. Chief?
Yeah, just I think some of the things to look out for, you referenced the Into People report. We've had that report to SLT, and we'll certainly get probably through to HR committee, councillor, really about what's that kind of sort of saying to us and the actions that we're following up from that, and the work we're doing with NTU that will feed into our community risk management plan. We're just in terms of revamping our people and organisational development or people and culture strategy about those, because we've previously reported our 10-year diversity plan, but the idea is why is that kind of separate and not kind of immersed in all the other things that we're doing. So we're trying to do some of those structural things. That's in the light of, in society, we have got significant challenges. And even this week we launched our South Asian Heritage Month exhibition, and in our social media we got some really not very nice people saying some not very nice things. In previous years, we would have took 3 or 4 days to take a position on it, and with our comms team, that night it came available. A conversation had at 10 o'clock at night. The next day, we put out a statement with my name on it. They are not welcomed. They are not the sort of people we want in the organisation or engaging with the organisation. We deliver without discrimination to all members of communities, regardless of doing that. And the culture in the service has moved massively. And things I think that are going to be interesting for you to see is, what does the HMI say about it when the report comes out? What has Into People said about it? We've literally in the last week and a half closed our 2-yearly staff survey. We had 68% of the workforce return the staff survey. Now, I don't know many organisations that get close to 68%. If that's not showing that we've got a relatively engaged workforce, I don't want it. Even if they want to moan about something, that's a good thing that they want to comment on the organisation. So I think there are some indicators out there how we're moving forward. When it's around the diversity things, are we should be? No, but it's going to take us some time. Are we working really hard to do the right things? I absolutely believe that we are trying to do the right things. And as the chair sort of said, we need every one of the members, and I think that's why when it comes to Strategic Inclusion Board in September, staff love to see members there because they feel that you feel it's important, and when they see that, it sort of reinvigorates them and gives them a shot in the arm. And of course staff networks, if you want to get involved in the staff networks.
Thank you, Naya. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I'm really looking forward to the report.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sybil, and then Roger.
It's going back slightly to flooding and acknowledging the fire authorities will with the fire flood authorities and the training of volunteer flood wardens, which is it's really essential and important, particularly in rural areas. I've done the flood warden training at the National events, got 3 separate flood warden schemes, but it's an essential role the fire authority does with the flood authority in ensuring that the training is there for volunteers to know how to what to do and to remain safe while assisting our community.
Thank you, Sybil. And thank you for your work in that area as well, Sybil, because I know you're doing an important job in your community in relation to that and have been a powerful champion for that for over a long period of time in the authority. Thank you for that. Roger?
Thank you, Jim. Yes, a very positive report. Some really good achievements, and I am assured. Picking up on the flooding issue, I would just like to, it's reminded me, I represent Radcliffe-on-Trent, and I think the clue's in the name, on Trent, and we had quite a lot of flooding. And I just want to pay tribute and thanks to the Bingham firefighters, because they came out, they prioritised an evacuation of half a dozen residents on the Wharf Lane Park estate, that frankly the River Trent was half an inch off their floors, and they got the boat or the dinghy or whatever out and evacuated them, and the Borough Council rehoused them temporarily. So very, very grateful to what the Bingham firefighters did that evening, because clearly they were in demand and they prioritised it, as you referred to, and were superb. And it triggers my thoughts when you say in the report 25 on-call firefighters have been recruited. Somewhere at the back of my mind there was an issue about Southwell or Southwell, where there were, from memory, issues about not having enough firefighters at that station, and Newark was brought in many times. You may not know, but are those recruits, have they come to Southwell or Southwell fire station?
Yeah, I can answer that, Councillor. So in terms of recruitment, we still struggle with Southwell. We're putting a lot of effort in terms of to have a dedicated on-call support team who are doing fantastic work in terms of maintaining availability through supplementing the team there. I believe that at least one of those people is recruited to Southwell, but I'll confirm those figures. But what you can be assured on is we are continuing to focus our efforts in terms of that and the local community there. The best and most challenging part of the on-call is that they're from the local community in equal measure. So I think we'll continue to do that work there. But the commitment of the team that are at Southwell is worthy of praise, because they really do a lot to try and make sure that appliance is available as much as often. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you for your kind words with the team at Bingham. I know that will be hugely appreciated by them, Roger, so thank you. I'm going to move the recommendation then, colleagues, that members approve the annual statement of assurance for 2023-24 publication. Is there a seconder for that? That's seconded. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you. Item 11 then is the statement of pay policy, which is on page 205 to 224. Colleagues will be very familiar with this report. It comes to us every year, but I think the Chief's going to do a brief introduction of the report for us.
Chair, as the report says, members, it is a standard report under the Localism Act around that transparency. Appendix A covers the detail of it, and I don't intend to go through any of that. I'll leave that for you to pursue. But if you do have any further questions of me or the team, please email it, give me a call after the meeting. If I can move us to pay policy 2.10 onwards, I'm just going to pick out some of those bullet points really. The first one being in terms of gender pay. You've seen in terms of median pay difference of 7.78 now as opposed to 9.49. It will always certainly be a challenge in terms of very heavily male dominated, and of course because it's uniform to the way we come through the organisation, we still need to work really hard to get more female applicants into the organisation and therefore progress through higher roles, and that will really have a positive impact, but at least some green shoots there. Mean average pay, where it talks about there per annum as well. And then there's the confirmation of the annual pay awards that were issued. Again, there's still some challenges and uncertainty because, of course, the Chair's mentioned around public sector pay, but there are some quotes for other sectors around above inflation pay rises being quoted. And we've obviously budgeted next year for 2% currently in our current plan. So the sooner we can get some knowledge about those kind of things, the better. There is touching on in terms of compensation and settlement payments that are covered within the schemes as well, where we've made changes to things like whether it be through disability payments or whether it be through sort of redundancies where we've done a restructure through our prevention team. So there are some bullet points there that will just pull out some of the appendix A, but I don't intend to go any further than that, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. The recommendation is that members approve the statement of pay policy attached to Appendix A. Are there any comments or questions people want to raise in relation to this report? No? I'll move the recommendation then. Is that seconded by somebody? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Item 12 is an update on His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary Fire and Rescue Services, which is on page 225 of the pack. And Mick's going to introduce his report.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to be presenting this report at the same time as we're presenting our own inspection report, but unfortunately, as already discussed, that report's not due into service until the week commencing the 12th of August. However, the Her Majesty's Inspectorate, they published an annual assessment of the Fire and Rescue Service. And this is published by the Chief Inspector, who's currently Andy Cook. These reports have been published on an annual basis since 2019. The report essentially looks at two different areas. It gives a view or a reflection from the Inspectorate about the systemic challenges that face the sector, and then the second part of the report is really a interim view or findings of the round 3 inspection. In terms of the systemic challenges, as I've already stated, in 2019 the first report was published and there were 6 recommendations that was made in this report, and these were 6 national recommendations. It's been reported that 3 of those recommendations have now been achieved, but there are still 3 that are still outstanding, and those broadly relate to, in the Inspectorate's view, that the government must press ahead with the sector reforms. And we've also made reference to some of those reports as part of our discussion today. But just really, they are determining the role of the Fire and Rescue Service, as we've already referenced. It's the reviewing and reforming of structures for determining pay. And then lastly, it's the view of the Inspectorate regarding the Chief Fire Officer's operational independence. Those are the same, or 3 of the same original recommendations that were made back in 2019. As you would expect, and quite rightly so, there has been a focus within the report regarding the values and culture of the Fire and Rescue Service, and we've already discussed the work that the service is doing to try and address those challenges. But it's quite right that the Inspectorate does point out some of those challenges and does talk about inconsistencies of an inappropriate behaviour and how they are still commonplace in certain fire and rescue services. Hopefully it's come loud and clear from both the Chair and the Chief Fire Officer about the highest priority that we place on having an appropriate and inclusive culture, and how we try to ensure that those cultural considerations are embedded in our decision-making process. Lastly, in terms of those systemic challenges, is the HMIC, they believe that they require additional powers to be able to drive forward further continuous improvements. The second part of the report is around the interim findings from round 3. Now, I must stress these are only interim findings, and these are as a result of 15 services that have been inspected. This will not include, this part of the report does not include any of the findings that relate to Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. Whilst that inspection occurred just prior to the report being published, it was very much too early to include any of those. And there are some concerns. It does raise the fact that there are still some what they call 12 causes of concern across the 15 services that they've inspected. It was remiss of me, I should have mentioned that the HMIC introduced a new grading this year round, which was an adequate grade, which sits between the requires improvements and good. It very much references workplace culture again, and it really sort of challenges the sector regarding its lack of diversity, again, which we've discussed, and quite rightly so. One of the points that I will point out is, and we've only just discussed this one, but it's reports that many services are having and maintaining, or having challenges in maintaining an effective on-call duty system. And as I've reported 2 reports ago, the service reported for 23-24 about 86% availability figures. Now, I'll put myself out there and say that we are one of the best within the sector in terms of that level of availability. Whilst there are inherent challenges with the on-call system in terms of the on-call recruitment, I think just to sort of emphasise Damien's response to the question around Southall, where we recognise there are challenges, we are doing really well, and that is proven or is evidenced by some of the comments that are made in this report. There's also challenges and reports around protection activities. They are being reported as inconsistent across the sector, recognising that or stating there is unsuitable quality assurance processes in place. Members are very much aware we've taken this very seriously, and we continue to work, particularly with the City Council, in terms of some of the high-level risk in the particularly in the high-risk high-rise premises, or residential premises, and we work very closely then with a joint inspectorate team. It's a very quick overview of the report, Chair, but I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Mick. It's very much appreciated, and thank you for taking us through the report. Callum?
Thank you very much, Chair. I just probably wanted to actually highlight 2.21 down was actually where it talks about how the initial feedback is actually out of the positive nature of the response. So, really, thanks well on this service. I just wanted to actually highlight that, because I know you weren't going to shout about it yourself, but I think it's a good thing actually, there's that collaboration between Inspectorate as well as the fire service itself. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. I appreciate it, as I'm sure do all the colleagues who took part in the inspection. Let's hope for a positive report when it's forthcoming. No other comments or questions? The recommendation is that we note the contents of the report, so I've moved that. Is that seconded? Colleagues in agreement to note the report? It's agreed. Thank you, colleagues. The next item is committee outcomes, which we're asked to note. Colleagues have to note the committee outcomes. Yep, they're agreed. Yeah. Thank you. Finally, then, item 14 is exclusion of the public, so it's to consider excluding the public from the meeting during consideration of the remaining items in accordance with Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 under Schedule 12A Part 1, Paragraph 3, on the basis that, having regard to all the circumstances, the public interest in maintaining an exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So I'll move the recommendation. Is that seconded? All those in favour of that recommendation? All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. So I'll